All right, I just got the thumbs up to start my presentation. So thank you everybody for coming in to listen to my talk. My name is Stephanie Tyski. I'm with Paul Smits College, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my master's research that I did at Paul Smits, which is about changing climates in virtual worlds, or how virtual reality can influence sense of place in climate change education. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about me. I don't have a background in video game design. Unlike many people here, I have a background in natural resource conservation with a focus in sustainable communities, which as I mentioned before, I got from Paul Smits College. I'm also the head esports coach at Paul Smits College, so if anyone wants to come talk about that, we are a couple rooms down. You can meet some of my students who are on our team. And I am also just a video game lover and hobby game developer. I've made a few games. One of them you can see here, The Great Crossing, which I made during one of my classes during COVID. That's you play as a little bunny hopping around different environments and learning about different ecological concepts. And the other is Aquatic Invaders, which I had help from these lovely individuals in the front, Sean and Tom, who helped me create this game, where you play as an aquatic invasive species and you are trying to impact all of the lakes within the Adirondack Park without being caught by the Adirondack Watershed Institute. You can come demo that at the table as well, and we'd love to chat with you more about that. But let's start out with a little bit of background on my research. So experiential education has been a cornerstone for lesson plans for years, and for a good reason. It's been shown that experiential education, especially in climate change, participants are able to retain more information about the topic and are more likely to have positive or make positive environmental decisions in the future. I apologize if I start talking too fast. If I do, please wave at me and I will make sure I slow down. Experiential learning through field trips in particular can increase a student's understanding of that subject, and virtual reality can allow us to do that for people who may not be able to go onto field trips and do it directly from our classrooms. This technology has become an integral part of our lives, or just technology in general is an integral part of our lives, and it only makes sense that these innovations that have occurred in the technological world would merge with areas of education. Virtual reality in particular provides a new opportunity for hands-on learning. For example, in research, it is shown that virtual reality is being used to teach medical students different methods so that they can use them in the OR. And the research shows that when they are able to practice in virtual reality, they are more confident when performing that procedure in the operation room. Virtual field trips can increase accessibility for those who might not be able to take a whole class away from the classroom, and it can decrease carbon emissions by eliminating the use of multiple buses, vans, and plane trips. This accessibility piqued my interest as I thought about how this technology could be used for virtual environmental education programs. Currently, literature on the use of virtual reality for specifically environmental education is extremely limited, which is where my research comes into play. The question I was looking to investigate was, how does virtual reality influence sense of place in the context of climate change education? Before we continue, I would like to define a couple of concepts, one you may be very well familiar with already. And I will be referring to them throughout the presentation. One of them is, of course, virtual reality, which is a computer-generated simulation of 3D graphics that are often interactive. VR can be used through a phone, through a computer, or even through a PlayStation system. I specifically used the Oculus Quest 2 before it was the Meta Quest for this research. And I will also be referring to sense of place. Sense of place is the attachment and how people connect with locations through attachment and put meanings to these places. For my research, I developed a virtual reality experience. I'd like to be specific on this, not a game. I have built an experience that depicts a popular local trail. We're very lucky to have a visitor interpretive center attached with our college, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But we depicted a local trail that shows how the ecosystem could be altered when impacted by climate change. I recruited 30 Paul Smith College students through posters and with the promise of possibly winning a $50 gift certificate to our bookstore. Those 30 students were broken down into groups of about 5 and 6 students, and they were asked to fill out pre- and post surveys to measure their place attachment before and after experiencing the program. Once everyone in that group had experienced the program, they answered their surveys, They were asked to gather in focus groups and ask questions about how the program made them felt and the information that they learned from it. To develop this experience, I used Unreal Engine 4. I digitally recreated one of the trails at our Visitor Interpretive Center, or VIC for short, known as our Barnum Brook Trail, and focused on 2 levels. One of the VIC in its current ecological state, and another in a 2 degrees Celsius warming scenario. These 2 degrees were based off of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change's 6th report. Now, I recognize that there has been a new report that has come out, so that part is a little bit outdated, but when I was doing this research, it was the most recent piece that had come out. And I based my examples of changes off of the book Climate Change in the Adirondacks by Jerry Jenkins. Here you can see some screenshots of the program, one from the front end where you can see a participant reaching towards one of the boxes where it will start a narration about the program, and then one from the back end that shows the level blueprint. These climatic changes that I referred to earlier were demonstrated mostly through the changes of flora and fauna. The flora specifically going from a forest dominated by a mixed spruce fir complex. So you're looking more at deciduous trees, ones with pine needles, more thicker, to a more oak-dominated complex, so more deciduous trees, as well as a change in audio through different bird calls. You can see let me see if I can get my mouse over here. Here we go. This represents the current state of the VIC. From eye level and from a developer eye's view, you can see how much denser the forest is versus the other side here, which I consider my warming scenario map for ease of mentioning it. The green plants that are missing on this side, I had left out to help cut down on rendering time when trying to load the levels and to try to keep my computer from combusting because it wasn't the best graphics card. A spoken narration was also played. Let me get my mouse out of here really quick. Apologize. A spoken narration was also played to help walk individuals through the program and describe what they were seeing and hearing around them, as well as the impacts that climate change can have on both ecological and human communities. This narration was activated by a participant. You saw those blocks about a slide earlier. When a participant was ready, they would grab the block and then they would hear the narration. And I wanted to give participants time to go through that so that they can get used to being in VR, as not everybody has used VR before, or at least my participants had not used VR before, and wanted to give them time to adjust to it so that they didn't get motion sick. Once I finally understood how to properly use Unreal Engine 4, development of this program took me about 80 hours. If we took the amount of time I took to learn that building my own trees were going to be impossible to import into the game, and to find the proper assets and address the program constantly failing on me, it took me about 4 months. Within these 4 months, I taught myself how to use 3 different versions of Unreal, and I taught myself how to use Unity a little bit, until I finally realized that the only program at that time that could support what I wanted to do was Unreal Engine 4. In hindsight, I probably could have gotten Unity to do what I wanted to do. It was just ease of use at that point that I was able to work with Unreal, so I just continued working with it. 5 was still in beta at that point, so that's why I continued to use Unreal Engine 4 instead of going to the more graphic-intensive Unreal Engine 5. Would it have been more beautiful? Probably. But would it also make my computer want to take off like a jet engine? Yes. Continuing onward, for my surveys, the pre and post surveys had 22 identical questions, quantitative questions that used a 5-point Likert scale. The first 7's goal were to measure place attachment, with 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. The remaining 17 questions asked participants to rate a word or a phrase on its accuracy in describing the visitor interpretive center, with 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. Some of these words and phrases were scenic, beautiful, important to preserve, and ecologically important. These questions were all based on previous studies on sense of place, as well as a place attachment survey that was created for the Shenandoah National Park. Surveys were created on Survey 123 through Esri, and I asked participants to answer the surveys on their phones through scanning a QR code. Results from t-tests run on the comparison of the overall score between the pre- and post-intervention surveys showed a significant mean increase in score, signifying an increase in sense of place for the VIC post-intervention of the program. Using a single sample t-test, the paired differences of the pre- and post-test means were found to be significant, with a p-value of less than 0.0001. Qualitative data analysis showed that most participants were impacted by the changing ecosystem, and specifically with the changing of the tree species, and as well as reporting feelings of remorse and possible loss. These results show us that virtual reality experience did impact participants' sense of place, specifically with the Visitor Interpretive Center. To take a closer look at this, questions specifically regarding personal opinions and attachments to the VIC showed a higher mean difference and higher significance levels than other questions. This finding is also backed by quotes from our participants. When asked how they felt about what they had witnessed, some said, "It's not the VIC anymore," or that it didn't feel right. Some said that they were heartbroken. And with this, a common theme found among the focus groups is the realization of the damage that climate change can have on an environment, and particularly on a very well-known recreational spot. Participants voiced their new understanding of climate change with quotes like, "I didn't know a few degrees could put that much change into an environment," and "I didn't realize how much it really affected specifically the VIC." Many participants also agreed that the use of virtual technology allowed them to better understand the material. One participant in particular made a really compelling quote that I would like to share with you. "I'm just going to say that was possibly the most unique climate change talk I've ever been to. If I'm sitting in a classroom listening to you talk for 2 hours, I am not going to remember anything you just said to me. However, I'm going to remember everything you just said to me because it was unique. So if I sat in a room with 300 other people listening to a professor for 3 hours, I would not remember a thing they said." I'd also like to talk about some limitations that were with the study, as there are with many studies. One would be the sample size. 30 participants is not enough to represent a population. It is a very small sample size. It would be beneficial to include participants that also were not college students in this population, in this sample size. Limitations of the size were due to timing and availability of our volunteers during a single semester. Most participants were students, as I mentioned, and most of them reported being in a science-related major, so this could have impacted their responses, as they could have had previous scientific knowledge and knowledge of climate change. I'd also like to point out that self-reports can lead to a social desirability bias, which could influence their answers. In other words, when people are put into focus groups, they may not be willing to speak up or say how they truly feel because they don't want other people in the group to think that they're crazy or stupid or bad, and so they don't want to truly share their opinions. With that being said, I believe that virtual reality is in a position where it could be used as a methodology in experiential environmental education. This research shows that VR can be used to influence sense of place, specifically in climate change education, and that it can connect people with a place without actually being there. So the question would be, what's next? I am looking into PhD opportunities where I would like to recreate this program and make it larger so that people could walk through the trails more, which a lot of people had actually requested. They'd like to see it as a full walk and experience rather than just standing in one area, which I had made it to stand in one area to try and reduce possible motion sickness while in virtual reality. I'd also like to increase accessibility. I'd like to be able to make this free to the public so that anybody can download it and use it. And I'd love to be able to bring the headsets into classrooms or where people might not be able to get out and see the trails or see the Adirondacks and visit other places. Imagine the next generations starting their ecological conscience in their own homes and growing beyond where they are today, simply because someone gave them the opportunity to go somewhere that they may not have been able to go to before. I'd love to also work more with video games and nature-based education in the future, as I feel that this is a really good way to connect with youth and just a really big growing field of technology and climate education. Really quickly, here's my literature cited. And finally, I just want to end on some acknowledgments and provide time for questions. This project was made possible through Paul Smith College Master's Program with funding from our Center for Sustainability, who helped me purchase the Oculus Quest 2 headsets. I'm also extremely grateful for the students that participated and helped make this research possible, along with the professors that helped me every step of the way and provided me support. If you would like to read my published research, it is published through the Adirondack Journal of Environmental Studies. Feel free to scan that QR code up on the screen, or you can stop by the Paul Smith College table, and I'd be happy to chat with you more about it there. Please note it'll bring you to the ResearchGate website, and it'll ask you if you to contact me to download the paper. Don't worry, I'll send it to you right away, no questions asked. I don't want to block this from anybody at all. And at this time, I would be happy to take any questions.
Hi.
Hello.
Excellent research.
Thank you.
And my question for you is, do you think you would see the same impact on people that weren't already in sort of an Adirondack forest environment? Like if we took this down to like New York City or somewhere where people don't have that connection at all to a place like this, do you think you might see the same thing, or do you think that your student, well, I'm not going to give you an or question. I'll leave it more open-ended.
So I think I would maybe see a difference, but not as much of a noted difference as people who might have already known about the Visitor Interpretive Center. So like I had mentioned, there could have been a chance that these people knew the VIC already, that they had these ideas of scientific knowledge before. So that's why I said I would love to bring it into different areas where people might not be able to get out, because I would love to see that difference. I want to know, is there that much of a difference? So make a long story short, yes, but not in the same way.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
Again, I met you out there. Wonderful research. I'm very happy to see this type of research being done, because this is what I do. I'm a professor at UAlbany. And I have a couple questions. In your post-survey questionnaire, did you have any questions about the usability of the headset, the going through the game, like any usability? And my second question is, did the participants get a tutorial on using the headset?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, no, I did not have any follow-up questions about usability of the program. And to answer your second question, I did have a small walkthrough on how to use everything first. I would ask participants if they have used virtual reality before, and if they have, I would give them a more condensed version, just still kind of walking them through the process in case it had been a while. And if they had not, I went a little more in depth on how to move the eyepieces and make sure that they were comfortable when they went into it. And before they full started, I wanted to make sure they were comfortable with the headset on their head before fully going through the experience.
Okay, great. And we do have a wonderful PhD program.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Any other questions? Well, if you don't have any right now, feel free to come over to the Paul Smith College table. I will be sitting over there with QR codes and the program to demo if you'd like to check it out. My students that are part of the esports team are also there and happy to answer any questions about the school or the team if you have any questions about that.